What would you do if, on a silent night on June 14th, 1998, in a forgotten desert, you came face to face with a damaged alien spaceship, and next to it, a gigantic woman with violet skin, with eyes that hid secrets capable of shaking empires? You need to imagine the scene clearly. The desert seemed infinite, an ocean of sand that stretched in all directions under a sky dotted with stars so close they seemed to want to fall to earth. The silence was so dense that every step, every breath sounded like a forbidden echo, and it was precisely in this void that something unexpected broke the routine of a common life, revealing what many would call impossible. The protagonist of this story was not an explorer or a scientist, but a single father, a simple man, marked by the weight of loneliness and the responsibility of caring for his little daughter. He traveled on forgotten roads in search of work, surviving on makeshift mechanical repairs, like someone condemned to wander between cities that barely remembered his name. That night, his car's headlights cut through the darkness like blades, illuminating dunes and dry bushes, until something colossal suddenly appeared ahead, a fallen metallic structure partially buried by the sand. It was as if the ground had spat out a secret buried for millennia. The shape did not resemble any known aircraft, nor satellites or human machines. The metal reflected the light of the headlights in bluish tones and, in some places, engraved symbols glowed faintly, as if they were breathing. Around it, the wind raised swirls of dust that made the scene look like a delusion, a living painting of desperation and silence. But it wasn't the ship's hull that made him break abruptly. It was the motionless silhouette beside it, tall, majestic, strange. A woman of almost unreal proportions, violet skin gleaming under the faint light, hair that seemed to reflect the very firmament, and eyes so deep they could contain the memory of galaxies. She wasn't just different. It was impossible to ignore that her presence carried something ancient, powerful, and at the same time wounded. The man's heart raced, but looking at his daughter asleep in the back seat, something prevented him from fleeing. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was courage, or just the inability to turn his back on someone in danger. And it was at that instant that the improbable happened. The stranger's eyes opened, and she stared at him as if she already knew him. Can you feel the weight of this scene? The contrast between the common man, the lonely father who only sought to survive, and the colossal figure of a fallen alien before him in the middle of the desert. This night would mark not only an encounter, but the beginning of a story capable of changing destinies and challenging borders between worlds. Because what started as an accident in the silence of the desert would soon be revealed as a forbidden encounter. A convergence between lives separated by stars, but united by something that neither time nor empires could stop. You advance through the desert with hesitant steps, feeling the cold of the sand under the wind that cuts like invisible blades. The car's headlight illuminates the impossible, that fallen, twisted ship, half buried, exuding an energy that does not belong to Earth. The metallic edges shine in bluish tones, as if they are pulsing to the rhythm of a sleeping heart. Indecipherable. Symbols mark the hull, reminiscent of hieroglyphs, but engraved on a living, organic material that seems to respond to your presence. And there, next to this colossal structure, is she, a figure that defies every definition you have ever known of what it means to be human. Tall, much taller than any person, with a deep violet skin tone that reflects light like polished crystal. Her body is enveloped by a shimmering suit made of a fabric that seems liquid and solid at the same time, with fibers that change color according to the movement of the wind. Her imposing presence is so great that fear mixes with fascination, and the impulse to flee collides with the inexplicable desire to approach. Your heart races. You look at the back seat of the car and see your daughter now awake, watching everything with those curious child's eyes that have not yet learned to fear the unknown. The contrast is brutal. While the adult instinct screams that this is dangerous, her innocence opens in trust, as if she sees they're not a threat, but a being worthy of compassion. You take a deep breath, take a few steps, and realize that the woman, and if that's what you can call her, is breathing irregularly, as if she is injured or exhausted. Her gaze, fixed on you, is deep, but contained. There is no despair or arrogance, just an almost unreal serenity, like someone trained to keep secrets, even in the face of death. She says nothing at first. She just watches you, as if she is assessing who you are. Suddenly, your daughter gets out of the car with a sudden and innocent movement. She holds a bottle of water, and with the naturalness that only a child can have, offers it to the stranger. The gesture breaks the suffocating silence. The alien hesitates for an instant, looks at the girl, and, for the first time, a shadow of emotion crosses her face. Her lips move discreetly, emitting soft sounds like notes of an ancient and refined language, impossible to understand, but full of melody. She accepts the water. The ice is broken. You get closer and notice that, even though she is gigantic, there is a fragility in her posture. The suit is damaged in several places, making visible wounds that glow in a bluish tone, as if her blood were made of liquid light. The smell that emanates from her is not metallic nor human. It is an ethereal aroma, reminiscent of ozone after a storm. Behind her, the ship stands as a living monument. Loose cables release sparks, bluish energy arcs snake like domesticated lightning. You see circular inscriptions along the fuselage, symbols that seem to reorganize slowly, as if they are trying to restart a system. There is something magnetic about it, as if the technology itself is observing you too. Your mechanical instinct speaks louder. Despite the fear, there is something in you that cannot ignore the silent call of a machine in need of repair. Improvised tools in your bag could serve, even if precariously. But as that thought takes shape, her gaze captures you again. It is not just any look. It's as if she knows that you can be the bridge between survival and the end. Still, she doesn't reveal who she is. She speaks little, in short sentences, and avoids details of her origin. The words she emits seem to be chosen with precision, as if each syllable carries too much weight to be wasted. But even without revelations, her presence already speaks enough. She is not just someone lost. She is someone who carries a story bigger than you can imagine. Your daughter, without understanding the gravity of the moment, begins to ask simple questions, gesturing, trying to touch the shimmering suit. And surprisingly, the alien does not recoil. On the contrary, she slightly lowers her head, allowing that small human hand to touch her violet skin. In that instant, something invisible seems to break. The wall of distrust gives way, and you realize that there is more than fear here. Trust is emerging. You feel the weight of the choice: stay and help, or retreat and protect your daughter. But inside you, something awakens. Maybe it's compassion. Maybe it's the premonition that this meeting is not by chance. In any case, fate has already been sealed. The first contact has been made, and nothing will ever be the same again. You stand before her, torn between the reason that screams to run away and the instinct that pushes you to stay. The fallen ship seems to breathe, emitting subtle vibrations that resonate in the dry desert air. Each bluish spark that runs through its broken cables briefly illuminates the violet skin of that imposing woman, revealing the strangeness and majesty of her presence. With each passing second, the idea of abandoning her sounds less possible. Then her gaze turns to you with intensity. It is a silent look, but in it there is a contained plea. It is not pride or arrogance, but a need that cannot be confessed in words. You understand without needing a translation. She needs help. With firm steps, you open the car's trunk and take out a small set of tools. They are human utensils, too simple in the face of the immensity of that ship, but it is what you have. A worn-out pair of pliers, a wrench, repurposed wires from other repairs. As you approach the hull, you feel the heat that emanates from it, a living, pulsating heat, as if the machine were made of flesh and metal at the same time. She observes your every gesture with caution, as if analyzing not only the technique, but the intention. When you touch the first cracked panel, the metal reacts. Symbols light up in sequence, forming lines that reorganize as if they were responding to your curiosity. You don't understand any of it, but the mechanic's instinct, the one born of the need to survive, to improvise solutions where there are no parts, guides your movements. Your daughter approaches naturally, bringing a piece of bread wrapped in cloth. She looks at the woman and extends the offer as one who shares a secret. The scene is almost sacred. The alien hesitates, looks at the simple food, and for an instant, her eyes shine with something you didn't expect, a human emotion. She accepts, brings the bread to her lips with reverence, and chews slowly, as if she were experiencing not just food, but the essence of human life in its purest form. Meanwhile, you continue the work. You open compartments by improvising, join wires that shouldn't fit, and adjust loose plates with the strength of your hands. With each attempt, the ship responds with sparks of energy, sometimes repelling, sometimes accepting your touch. You notice that there are strange insignias on the hull, symbols repeated in patterns that resemble crowns, stars, and spirals. Something in you senses that it carries importance, perhaps even a sign of who she really is. But your human knowledge is insufficient to decipher it. She, in silence, approaches and touches your fingers, guiding them to a specific point. It's as if she is showing you the way without needing words. You feel her skin, warm, firm, but also delicate. The contact is brief and yet intense, a silent but revealing exchange. The repair turns into a ritual of trust. You improvise, she observes. You try, she indicates. Your daughter, curious, asks questions that are not answered with words but with looks and small gestures. Slowly, the atmosphere of distrust dissolves. Respect is born between you, respect that doesn't come from logic, but from need, and the strange feeling that you were destined to meet. While you work, you comment on trivial things. You talk about long roads, about engines that insist on failing, about how a single father's life is made of difficult choices and constant improvisation. She doesn't respond with her own stories, avoids mentioning her origin, but her eyes let slip fragments of something greater, like someone who carries a universe of secrets that cannot be revealed, and even without speaking, she listens. Truly listens. Your every word seems to be received with an almost reverent respect. This makes you realize, perhaps in her vastness, she does not know the simplicity of human life. Perhaps it is this simplicity that touches her. When the last wire is adjusted, the ship releases a stronger pulse of energy. The circular lights around the hull slowly turn on, like a heart starting to beat again. The sand around it vibrates, the air becomes dense, and for an instant you believe that the ship will be able to fly again. Your daughter smiles, enchanted, as if she had just witnessed a miracle. You step back, take a deep breath, and face her. She returns the look, and this time there is not only caution. There is gratitude. A silent gratitude, but so deep that it dispenses with words. Something has been established. A bond. The desert remains silent, but inside you everything has changed. You no longer see her as a stranger. You see a wounded being who trusted you, even when she had no reason to do so. And perhaps, without realizing it, you have already trusted her too. Before we continue, if this video is being useful and intriguing to you, now is the time to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment below what you would do if you were in this man's place that night. Your interaction helps a lot to take these stories to more people. The heavy silence of the desert, which until then seemed like a protective frame for that improbable encounter, begins to transform into something different. You feel it first from the wind, which no longer blows randomly. There is a strange cadence, as if the air were carrying a premonition. The sound of the tools resting on the sand echoes louder than it should, and even your daughter's breathing seems sharper, as if the world has entered a state of alert. The alien notices before you do. Her violet eyes narrow, sweeping the horizon. The muscles of her colossal body tense, and you notice a different glow running under her damaged suit, as if hidden systems were being activated in preparation for something. She says nothing, but you understand. They are no longer alone. You raise your eyes and see in the distance points of light moving in the dark. They are not stars nor common headlights. The lights slide low, cutting the dunes like silent serpents. First two, then three, then more. Your heart races. The desert, once vast and empty, now seems like a stage where you are the center of a hunt. The wind brings metallic sounds, grinding noises that resemble dragged chains or engines that do not belong to common cars. With each gust, a new shadow seems to emerge, distorted in the sand. You feel the invisible pressure of the pursuit, as if hidden eyes are watching you with dark intentions. Your daughter holds your hand, confused. You try to smile, but your throat is dry. The alien, in turn, takes a step forward. Out of nowhere, a weapon forms in her hand. It's not like anything you've ever seen. It is a translucent structure, made of condensed energy that vibrates with an almost imperceptible sound. She holds the object firmly, in a warrior's stance, but still, she does not fully reveal who she is. The shock hits you brutally. She is not just someone lost. She is not just a fallen traveler. She is a target, hunted, and the danger that approaches is greater than anything you have ever faced. A beam of light crosses the night sky and disappears behind a nearby dune. The sound that accompanies it is not thunder, but something sharp, artificial. You instinctively kneel, pulling your daughter against your chest. The fear you feel is so real that your stomach turns. At the same time, an unbearable thought invades you. Maybe it would have been better to have left. But it's too late. The alien looks at you for a second. Her gaze is not one of reproach or fear, but of determination. You realize she is willing to fight, and in some way also to protect them. Even without revealing her true identity, she has already made it clear, with her actions, that she will not allow anything to touch your daughter. This detail moves you more than any words could. The entire desert seems to hold its breath. The lights approach in silence, but you already know. They are vehicles, machines, or maybe something even worse. Your instinct tells you they are hunters, and your heart tells you there's no going back. You look at the car, the old engine that has failed so many times, and understand that there is no way to escape just by driving. Your destiny is now tied to that wounded ship, to that enigmatic woman who no longer seems just a stranger. It's as if everything in your life had led to this instant, and now the choice is not between helping or not. It's between surviving or being swallowed by something you barely understand. Your daughter, perhaps unaware of the gravity, asks in a low voice, "Dad, are they friends?" You have no answer. The silence cuts deeper than any word. The alien raises the energy weapon towards the horizon. A discreet glow runs across the ground, as if marking an invisible boundary between you and those who are approaching. You realize that she's prepared to fight, but what really shakes you is that, even armed, she seems to carry a greater weight. Not only the risk of capture, but the burden of protecting something that has not yet been revealed. The desert is no longer a refuge. It is an arena about to explode. You know that in a few minutes the shadows will turn into bodies, and the lights into weapons. The danger approaches without mercy, and you wonder if you are really ready for what is to come. But deep down, you might already know the answer. There is no turning back. The first explosions of light cut through the desert like celestial blades. The silence that had dominated until then is broken into metallic screams, into vibrations that make the ground tremble under your feet. The distant points that moved on the dunes now reveal their shape, black armored vehicles, gliding over the sand like nocturnal predators. From their sides, energy cannons emit bluish shots that illuminate the horizon and hit the ground with violence, launching columns of sand into the air. You don't think. You just react, instinct. You grab your daughter tightly, crouching behind one of the twisted parts of the ship's hull. Your heart beats so fast, it feels like it wants to burst, while your ears echo with the deafening sound of the discharges that explode in all directions. And then she rises, the woman with violet skin, who until now had remained reserved and silent, partly reveals herself. With firm movements, she raises her energy weapon and fires at the vehicles. The air fills with bright rays that cut the night in perfect lines, hitting the enemies with an almost supernatural precision. Each of her shots is a promise. No one will pass easily through here. You watch, stunned, at the force that explodes from her figure. It's not just skill, it's pure power, shaped by the experience of battles you can't even imagine. The sand vibrates under your feet with each impact. The desert turns into a battlefield between forces you don't understand. A shot hits the ship's hull with violence, throwing sparks and almost knocking you to your knees. The smell of ozone and burnt metal invades the air. The little one holds your neck more tightly, and her fear is the same as the one you feel. But there is also something different, a strange confidence that, in some way, that woman is fighting not only for herself, but also for you. The conflict intensifies. More vehicles appear, surrounding the area. The shadows of the hunters appear among the dust, hooded figures, armed with rifles that fire incandescent red beams. They are mercenaries, predators from another world, interstellar hunters hired to fulfill a merciless mission. You have no weapons, no training, but the fatherly instinct moves you. You see a metal bar fallen next to the ship and grab it as your only defense. It's nothing compared to their technology, but you can't just stand there. When one of the hunters gets too close, you advance, striking with all the strength you have. The metallic shock echoes in the air, and for an instant you feel that you are not just a spectator, but part of that battle. She notices what you did, and even in the midst of the combat, her eyes meet yours. There is surprise there, but also respect. You didn't run away. You chose to stay. The ship shakes again. One of the circuits you had improvised lights up again, releasing stronger sparks. You realize the improvised repair is working. The structure is trying to awaken, to respond, to come back to life. The deep sound that emanates from the internal core makes the air vibrate like a war drum. The alien shouts something in her incomprehensible language and gestures towards the ship's entrance. It's the signal. You need to get in now. With your daughter in your arms, you run towards the improvised ramp that opens in the hull, dodging shots that hit the sand a few centimeters from your feet. The heat of the explosions almost burns your skin, but you continue, driven by something greater than fear. Behind you, the hunters advance, firing mercilessly. One of the shots hits the car you came in, which explodes in flames. Your heart tightens. That last connection with your previous life disappears in seconds, consumed by the fire. There's no turning back. Inside the ship, the environment is even more surreal. Panels light up on their own. Symbols shine on walls that seem to move like living organisms. The air vibrates with pure energy. You lay your daughter on an improvised seat and cling to a metallic structure, trying to understand how such a thing can even exist. The woman with violet skin enters right after you, still firing at the enemies outside. By touching one of the panels, the ship reacts with violence, releasing a wave of energy that pushes the hunters back. The metallic roar that follows this gesture is deafening. The engines, wounded but not defeated, are waking up. The ramp slams shut with a clang, and you feel the growing vibration beneath your feet. Shots continue to hit the hull, but the ship holds. An intense light runs through the walls, and the sound of the core accelerates into a continuous roar. Your body is pressed against the seat as the ship abruptly rises, tearing from the sand like a beast refusing to be tamed. Outside, the hunters shoot in desperation, but it's too late. The desert sand whirls in a violent vortex, lifted by the force of the thrusters. You squeeze your daughter's hand tightly as the horizon disappears under a curtain of dust and light. Your heart pounds so loudly it seems to compete with the roar of the ship. The impossible has happened. You're taking off, and even amidst the terror, something in you knows this isn't the end. It's just the beginning of a destiny you never imagined you would live. The metallic roar of the ship fills every space of your body. Your stomach feels like it's in free fall as the desert quickly becomes just a blur of moonlit sand. You hold your daughter with all your strength, eyes squeezed shut against the pressure that threatens to crush your bones. The impossible is happening before you. A machine that shouldn't exist, taking flight under Earth's skies, carrying with it an ordinary man, a frightened child, and a woman who is not of this world. The ship's interior pulses in bluish and silvery tones. Organic panels reconfigure. Symbols move in patterns that resemble constellations, and energy vibrates as if the ship itself has come back to life by its own will. Every step you take echoes as if you're inside a living cathedral, built not of stone, but of light and mystery. And then, in the midst of this frenzy, you notice something. Etched on one of the central panels is a larger, more detailed symbol than the others. A circle wrapped by 3 interconnected crowns, emanating a golden glow that stands out from the rest. This isn't just a technical detail, it's an emblem, an insignia of power, of authority. You look at her. The violet-skinned woman stands before the panel, one hand resting on it, breathing with difficulty. Her suit is still torn, the wounds on. Her body glow in bluish tones, but there is an indestructible imposingness in her posture. She notices that you've seen the symbol, and this time she doesn't look away. The silence between you is heavy. Finally, she speaks. Her voice is firm, but laden with a weight that seems greater than galaxies. You need to know who I am. The words echo inside the ship, crossing your mind like a soft thunder. She hesitates, as if fighting with herself, until she takes a deep breath and completes. I am the daughter of Athion, ruler of the Mer Empire. I am the heir to the throne, a princess of my people. The world crumbles inside you. What was until now just a surreal encounter takes on an unthinkable dimension. That woman is not just a survivor. She is someone who carries the weight of kingdoms, of empires, of civilizations that you cannot comprehend. An alien princess, lost on a planet that shouldn't be a witness to her fragility. She continues, now with a choked but firm voice. I was betrayed. A conspiracy was born within my own blood. My father, the ruler, was imprisoned. My family divided. Mercenaries were hired to hunt me before I could claim my right. This ship was my only escape, but even in exile there is no refuge. There will always be eyes pursuing me. You feel your throat dry. The simple act of repairing wires and bolts has turned into something immensely greater. Suddenly, you're no longer just a solitary traveler trying to survive with your daughter. You have been dragged into the center of an intergalactic war where empires and betrayals decide the fates of entire worlds. The princess stares at you with seriousness. Her violet eyes shine like contained storms. You don't understand what you've done. By helping me, you've put yourself in their path. Now you and your daughter are part of this, and I cannot leave you behind. You feel the overwhelming pressure of her words. Fear grows in waves, but something else arises in your heart, a strange sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, you don't feel like just a wandering survivor. There is greatness in your actions, even if you weren't aware of it. You saved a life that carries the hope of thousands, perhaps millions. Your daughter, curious, looks at the woman with innocence and asks in a low voice, "Are you a queen?" The princess kneels before her, even exhausted. She gently touches the child's hand and replies with a rare tenderness, a tenderness that seems forgotten in her condition as an heir of empires. Not yet, but maybe one day. In that instant, the atmosphere of the ship changes. The bond that was already growing becomes something even deeper. It's not just survival, it's trust, it's destiny. The princess admits, in a tone that mixes gratitude and confession, "I should have died in the desert. But your kindness gave me another chance. No matter who you are, mechanics or wanderers, what you did changed everything." You notice tears in your daughter's eyes, but they are not of fear. They are of something greater, as if even in her innocence, there was already the understanding that they are living something unique. And you, in silence, absorb the revelation. A princess, a fugitive, an heir hunted by traitors who seek to erase her blood from history. And you, a simple man, now part of this impossible plot. Your heart feels heavy, but at the same time, a flame ignites. Because deep down, you know, this story is not just hers. It's yours now. The revelation still echoed within you when the ship, wounded but resilient, crossed the atmosphere towards a starry void. The sidereal silence replaced the roar of the desert, but this silence did not bring peace. It brought weight. It brought the certainty that there was no turning back now. You were not just a man who helped a mysterious traveler. You were an accomplice of an alien princess at war with the forces that dared to betray their own blood. She adjusted controls, and each gesture activated systems that responded like living organisms, pulsing in harmony with her presence. The ship's energy seemed to recognize her, as if it were part of her body. You watched her, still trying to understand how such an imposing figure, an heir of empires, could seem at the same time so close. Until she turned to you and said with firmness, "I can't just run away. My father is imprisoned. If he falls, my people will fall. I need to free him." The words hung in the air, and for a moment you felt the dizziness of an impossible choice. You wanted to protect your daughter. You wanted to go back to Earth, to forget everything. But you also knew you couldn't turn your back on this. The princess's gaze carried a strength that did not allow for cowardice. You replied with a trembling but convinced voice, "Then let's go get him." A slight nod from her confirmed that this decision was already inevitable. The journey took you to the orbit of a grey moon, where a colossal fortress stood, surrounded by energy fields that shimmered like auras of war. Metallic towers pointed into space, emitting beams of surveillance that cut through the darkness in threatening patterns. With each rotation of the moon, red flashes illuminated the abyss, revealing fighters and patrols in constant motion. There stood the imprisoned ruler. There stood her father. The princess took a deep breath and armed herself again. Her suit, still damaged, began to slowly regenerate, revealing parts of her true armor, crystalline plates that covered her shoulders, symbols of royalty that shone in gold. She looked bigger, more imposing, as if she was finally assuming her identity. But you would also have a role. Before the ship's systems, she quickly explained, pointing to panels that adapted to her touch. You don't understand our technology, but your improvisation proved something. I need you to interfere with the containment systems. The hunters don't expect a simple human to be able to bypass their mechanisms. Use that. You swallowed hard, but nodded. Your daughter, in turn, didn't want to be left behind. She held your hand and said with resolute innocence, "I can help. I'm small, no one will see me." Her words, though childish, carried a symbolic weight. The princess smiled for the first time since the encounter. It wasn't a smile of war, but of hope. The attack began. The ship plunged into the moon's atmosphere like a wounded ray of light. passing through defenses with improbable maneuvers. Alarms echoed through the fortress, and shots cut through space, but you managed to penetrate through a side opening. The impact made the hull tremble, but the ramp opened, and you advanced amidst the chaos. Inside the fortress, narrow corridors pulsed in red, filled with armed guards. The princess advanced like a storm of energy. Her weapon launched beams that ricocheted off the walls, taking down enemies in a sequence. You behind her improvised. You found exposed cables, power systems, and, with twisted wires and brute force, created short circuits that disarmed containment fields and unlocked bolted doors. With every step, you felt your heart exploding in your chest. But there was something bigger moving you. The desire to protect not just your daughter, but also the people you had never seen, who depended on the liberation of their ruler. At one point, an energy barrier blocked the way. Guards appeared from both sides, and the situation seemed lost. It was then that your daughter, with wide eyes, noticed a low panel hidden almost at floor level. She ran to it before you could stop her. With her small hands, she pressed symbols that shone like stars. The system reacted, releasing a side opening that disoriented the guards. This innocent gesture was the difference between defeat and advance. You escaped through that alternative corridor, and the princess looked at the girl with reverence. Even the small can change the course of battles. Finally, you reached the central room. In the center, wrapped in chains of bluish energy, was the ruler. A colossal man with lighter skin, a face marked by age and authority. His eyes, though tired, burned with the flame of royalty. Around him, complex systems kept the prison active. The guards who defended the room were met with the fury of the princess. The confrontation was brutal. Shots, screams, sparks illuminating the environment like lightning. You ran to the containment panels, connecting wires, forcing connections, creating shortcuts that no engineer would think of trying. Every spark that jumped from the cables was like a risk of death, but you persisted. And then the impossible happened. The energy field collapsed in a flash that almost blinded your eyes. The chains disappeared, and the ruler fell to his knees, free. The princess ran to him, holding him firmly. For an instant, the war around them disappeared, and all that remained was the embrace of a daughter reuniting with her father. But there was no time for celebrations. Explosions shook the fortress. Alarms echoed louder. The enemy knew they had lost, but they would not give up victory easily. You ran together, father, daughter, princess, and you. The outcome was a desperate escape amidst the chaos. Explosions behind every corner, collapsing corridors, the ground splitting under the weight of the destruction. The ship awaited you, with engines roaring like a beast, ready to fight for freedom. And when you finally took off, leaving the fortress in ruins behind you, the sky was lit with the flame of destruction. You had won. But more than that, you had changed the course of history. The fortress behind you explodes in a flash that illuminates the entire moon. Metallic fragments break into space like cosmic dust, and the alarms that echoed in your mind turn into silence. The impossible has happened. The ruler has been freed, and you have survived a persecution that seemed to have no end. Inside the ship, the atmosphere changes. The roar of battle gives way to a reverent silence. The princess, still breathless and marked by wounds, kneels before her father. The ruler, though weakened, raises his hand to touch her face, like someone holding the universe itself in a simple gesture. There are tears in his eyes, tears that belong not only to a leader, but to a father who reunites with his daughter. You watch from a distance, with your daughter asleep in your lap. Your chest fills with a strange feeling, a mix of relief and disbelief. How could a simple, wandering man have become a key player in a conflict involving empires and conspiracies? But at the same time, you feel that nothing was by chance. The princess turns to you. Her violet eyes shine with a renewed intensity. There are no more secrets between you. She is an heir, a leader, but above all, someone who recognizes in you the strength of selfless kindness. You gave us more than help. she says with a firm voice. "No, you gave us hope," the ruler confirms with a solemn gesture, and for a moment you feel the weight of unknown kingdoms resting on your shoulders. But strangely, it is not a burden. It is a calling. The journey continues until before your eyes a spectacle arises that no words could fully describe. The ship crosses portals of light, passes through cosmic corridors, and finally arrives at a planet of indescribable splendor. Crystalline towers rise amidst shimmering oceans. Energy fields dance in the air like eternal auroras. It is a brutal contrast to the arid desert where it all began. You step on the surface of that world like someone who has crossed a dream. The air vibrates with vitality. Gravity feels lighter, and every color is so intense it hurts your eyes. The royal palace rises ahead, a structure that mixes art and technology, where walls are made of solid light, and corridors echo invisible music. There, the ruler is received by guards and advisors. The people bow before his presence, and by his side, the princess reassumes her position. The scene is grandiose, but you feel something greater. It is not just the coronation of an heir, but the rebirth of a people, and you, a stranger, are a privileged witness to this moment. Your daughter runs through the luminous corridors, enchanted by every detail. The inhabitants observe her with curiosity, but also with respect, as if they realize that somehow that little human was an essential part of everything. The princess approaches again. She places her hand on your shoulder, looking directly into your eyes. "You will not be forgotten." A gesture of kindness changed the destiny of entire worlds. You feel the weight of those words. Deep down, you know you are still the same simple man. But now you carry something greater, the certainty that even small acts, offering help to a stranger, improvising repairs in the middle of the desert, choosing not to run away, can alter the course of history. The contrast between the beginning and the end is inevitable in your mind. You remember the broken car, the empty desert, the loneliness. And now, before palaces of light and a reborn empire, you realize that every step of that journey was guided by an invisible thread. It wasn't by chance, it was destiny. As you gaze at the horizon of that new world, you feel that a cycle has closed. No matter what comes next, you have already understood the deepest lesson. Greatness is not born only from crowns or royal blood, but from gestures that seem small, yet carry the power to transform everything. Your daughter runs to you smiling, and the princess remains by your side, firm, as if that bond could never be broken. And then, the certainty invades you. A new destiny has begun. If you've made it this far, I want to know your opinion. Do you believe that encounters like this have already happened on Earth? Leave your comment, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Your participation is essential for us to continue bringing these narratives of mystery and revelation.